All right, my friends, here I am back at it. It is 12:30 on Wednesday after our less than stellar class on Tuesday night. I do appreciate your patience, and I want to apologize again for the frustration you're encountering trying to conference using Big Blue Button. But regardless of that, we have other options at our disposal. One of them being for me to get to a very important part of last night's lesson, which was to explain in detail the major assignments, because I want you to have as much time as possible to get to those major assignments. So that's all I'm going to do now in this presentation. And after recording it here, I will doctor it up a little bit. In particular, what I'm going to do is download it, bring it over into another application to edit it, and insert a slide so you can see the times when I'm speaking on any particular assignment. That way, if you want to go back and view the version just about a particular assignment, you can see the time during the video when it appears, and it's kind of like a topic listing by time, so you can go to it and again get a tutorial on the assignment. So again, I hope that helps. So let's get to it. All right, so here is a description of the major assignments. You have to compose a personal philosophy statement that incorporates the role of education and democratic principles, creating a blog. This is something that we were going to do last night. I was actually going to give you time in class to work in a group. That I will do. I'll carry that over to the third class, and I will give you some time to work in small groups. Well, hopefully. All right, we don't know. We don't know if we'll be able to connect, but if we can, we will. I'll give you some time to work in groups creating a blog. By the way, I did find out that Google Hangout, even the educator version, apparently limits the number of participants only to 10. So I can't use Google Hangout, and all the other products I looked at cost. And I'm not about to do that for Niagara University. They're going to have to do it for themselves. So we'll give you time to create a blog. We'll talk about that tonight, though, or in this presentation. Also, the assignment is to create a PowerPoint highlighting the P-TECH grant stipulations, have you attend a board meeting and script and or reflect upon a superintendent and board members' interactions, and to compose an advocacy letter. So I'm going to go through in detail each of these major assignments. First of all, I want to make sure that you understand why I'm doing this. I'm going to draw the assignments, in this case to compose a personal philosophy statement that incorporates the concepts associated with schooling and democratic values. Here's the NELP standard: to promote core democratic values that define the district's culture and stress the imperative of child-centered education, such as high expectations and student support, equity, inclusiveness, social justice, openness, caring, and trust. My feeling being that you're not going to be able to maintain or promote any of these core democratic values unless you know what they are. So we'll go back to the knowledge base. And that's what we're going to do. I've got a reading for you and a reflection, and I'm going to have you put together a philosophy statement. All right. It has to be at least 3 paragraphs. You should have an opening, a body, and a closing. More on that in a moment. That articulates your personal philosophy pertaining to ways in which education fosters democratic principles and values. The rubric, the topics such as those mentioned in the article, Democracy and Education, are to be included in the personal philosophy statement. The article can be found at, here it is right here. The due date is at the end of the semester. I do want to say as well that this, I should have said, but I'm going to hold you to standard English, compositional English when you're putting this philosophy statement together. If you give me, as I've seen too often when I don't stress this, pieces of article or reflections, or in this case a philosophy statement that don't adhere to common standards of the spoken word or the written word, oh, sorry for that. Well, then I'm going to kick it back to you until you get it right. Hang on. Okay, let's move on and give you some detail. First of all, starting from the beginning, what's a philosophy statement in education? And in this case, I found one for teaching philosophy. I want you simply to substitute the word leadership for teaching as we read through this, all right? So Janelle Cox, in an article updated in 2019, says that an educational philosophy statement or teaching philosophy statement is a brief essay that all nearly prospective teachers are required to write, which is something I said during the first class. Quote, a teaching philosophy statement is a purposeful and reflective essay about the author's teaching, beliefs, and practices. It is an individual narrative that includes not only one's beliefs, important word, beliefs about the leadership and learning process, but also concrete examples of the ways in which he or she enacts these beliefs in the classroom, in the building, in the district. And a well-crafted leadership philosophy statement gives a clear and unique portrait of your beliefs as a leader. And that further explains that the teaching philosophy statement is important because a clear philosophy of teaching can lead to a change in teaching behavior and foster professional and personal growth. For you who are training to be superintendents, this is EDU631, or Central Office Administrators, it's expected by a Board of Education who's doing the hiring or the interviewings that you will have in your portfolio a philosophy statement so that they know who you are on paper and that it forms the core of your beliefs, which is why we are doing this. Components of a teaching philosophy statement. You should have an introduction. This should be your thesis statement where you discuss your general belief about education. Here's an example. I believe all students have a right to learn. Granted, that's quite generic, but that is a good example. As well as your ideals in relation to leadership. You should begin with the end, says James M. Lang. 4 Steps to Memorable Teaching Philosophy. You might want to check this out. Lang says you should consider what the student will have learned once they depart your class, after having been guided by your teaching philosophy and strategy, or in your case, your leadership philosophy, around this one issue, core democratic principles. I'm lifting core democratic principles. Your philosophy statement could include many different things, but I'm having you focus on the role of education in promoting core democratic principles. Remember the NELP standard. Then your philosophy statement should also, in addition to what? An introduction, also contain the body. In this part of the statement, discuss what you see as the ideal, we won't say classroom, the ideal learning environment and how it makes you a better leader. Address student needs and facilitates parent-child interactions. Discuss how you would facilitate age-appropriate learning. Remember, what's important here is that you should have a body here, which is discusses what it should look like in the ideal. What it should look like in your districts that's promoting core democratic principles in your interactions with the public, in your interactions with students, your interactions with staff, and your interactions, say, with the Board of Education, and how it translates into the learning environment. You should clearly state your goals and objectives for students. That's specifically what you hope your leadership will help students to accomplish, or staff to accomplish, or the board to accomplish, etc. Be specific by telling a story or offering a detailed description of any innovative or interesting strategies you have used. That's a good thing to do. And then you should have a conclusion. You talk about your goals as a leader, how you have been able to meet them in the past, and how you can build on these to meet future challenges. Focus on your personal approach to leadership and classroom and district-wide management. As well, it makes you unique as an educator and how you wish to advance your career to further support education. So, your philosophy statement to me should contain at least 3 parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Here are some general rules to follow. Keep it brief. It should be no more than 1 or 2 pages. I agree with that as well. Use present tense and write the statement in the first person, as the previous examples illustrate. I believe, present tense. Avoid jargon. Use common everyday language, not technical terms. Don't use acronyms. Don't use, APPR. Don't say APPR. Say Annual Professional Performance Review, if that's what you're going to talk about. No acronyms. Create a vivid portrait that includes strategies and methods to help your reader take a mental peek into your leadership style. And talk about your experiences and your beliefs. Here's one example. Remember, these are teaching philosophies. I couldn't find good examples necessarily of leadership philosophies, but you can adapt. For instance, my philosophy of education is that all children are unique and must have a stimulating educational environment where they can grow physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially. Your philosophy statement, because it's focusing on core democratic principles, is going to reflect immediately on that. You're going to bring that to the fore, those core democratic principles. And there are many. And you're going to have to sit down and decide which ones are your part of your core beliefs. And that's where the article comes in. All right, here's an article that you have access to, Democracy and Education in the United States. It's one of the lengthier ones that I've assigned to you. It's not that large actually, but take a look at it. Here in this slide, I've highlighted some of the paragraphs which are most germane to the assignment. I believe it's really important to have a historical perspective of the role of education going back to the 17 and 1800s, all right? And they talk about that here, and you really ought to have a good background in what education was seen as in the beginning as we established this country, and with a large immigrant population in our schools. Think of it, all right? So read about the historical perspective. You might want to draw this into your philosophy statement, or at least give you perspective, give you a context for what you're going to write about today. Here's a good paragraph about the role of schools in a democratic society. It says it right here, a lot of the important things that are coming out right here, all right? I'm not going to read every one of these. I'm just pointing out for you. I was just drawn to a word here. And for implicitly allowing a business model of competing in the global economy to trump civic purposes for schooling. Well, that's rather ironic. All right, so take a look at this and borrow from this paragraph as well as the other paragraphs in this article. This is a critique you need to know. This article that I've assigned to you. Notice here, it is against the background of a declining attention to civic educational purposes that the Carnegie Corporation released a report in 2003 entitled The Civic Mission of Schools, containing contributions of the most respected and distinguished scholars. Let me read the quote. For more than 250 years, Americans have shared a vision in which all citizens understand, appreciate, and actively engage in civic and political life, taking responsibility for building communities, contribute their diverse talents and energy to solve local and national problems, deliberating about public issues involving influencing public policy, voting, and pursuing the common good. Americans know that it is a rare and precious gift to have this. Here's the question. So what's the role of public education in promoting these common goods? That's a question that I ask you, and it's not rhetorical, because if you can answer that question, then you've put forth your philosophy statement about the role of public education in promoting democratic principles and values. Here's more on the same topic. All right, I'm drawing this to your attention so that you draw from this. I really think you should stick to these topics, because I saw previous semesters when students tried to wing it and go off the cuff, they didn't do a very good job. I wasn't really sure what they were talking about, because they weren't really able to articulate what were core democratic principles that they believed in. So that's the one assignment, the philosophy statement. I wish I could take questions. I will certainly. I'm going to make myself a note. I'll create time at the beginning of the next class for you to ask questions about these assignments. So write them down and ask me at the beginning of the class. Hang on. So this is for 610. No. Yeah, 611. One, I'm going to allow for questions. And something else I said I was going to do, which I'll remember later. All right? So here's the next major assignment. That was it. Create time for blog work. All right. I hope you recall. Well, let's look at the assignment first and the rationale. To create a web-based blog using EDU631 or a regional facsimile. You might have something else you want to use with prior permission of the instructor. If you're going to use some other application other than EDU631, ask me first so that I can make sure that I agree with it. Now, this is tied to the NELP standard, which talks about you as a central office administrator, district level administrator, maintaining ongoing two-way communication with families and the community, develop an understanding of the diverse interests, needs, and resources of the community in service of student development and education improvement. There are many ways to do that. Attending after-school activities, going to PTA meetings, be a member of civic groups in your community, all different ways of doing that, all right? But one of the more modern, if you will, digital ways is to maintain a blog. And that's why I'm going to get you into it. You're going to create a digital link, just a digital link to a web-based blog created by the student. This is all you have to do. Open the account, which is what we will do together the next time we are successfully connected, but create an account, and in that new account, that blog account, include an active link and information on the blog that simply indicates your name and the blog title. The very basics of creating this free blog. There's nothing involved. This is a free blog. All right. This is due also by the end of the semester. Let me give you some background into blogging if you've not done it. What is a blog? It's a regularly updated website or web page, typically run by an individual or small group, that is written in an informal or conversational style. You add new material to or regularly update a blog. What it doesn't say here is that this is two-way. You create entries on your blog and people respond to you, not necessarily in real time. It's what you would call asynchronous. You post a blog, people respond. When you get a chance, you go back and respond to them. But I want to draw your attention to one of my colleagues and friends who does a really good job with her blog. All right, her name is Kimberly Moritz. She's the superintendent of Springville Griffith Institute. Here is her blog, which you can find by going to Springville Griffith Institute Public School District. And if you go to the superintendent's page, you'll see right on that page, you'll see this blog shows up, and you can click on it and you'll go right to it. I'm sure if you search for Kimberly Moritz blog, you'll find it as well. So I just wanted to look at us nice and simple, first of all, that this blog page is. And this is where Kimberly puts her information. She can put links here as well, all right? But look at the topics that she keeps bringing up, or that they talk about. They talk about combining athletics with a nearby school district, West Valley, which coincidentally I used to be superintendent of. She talks about computer science and maintenance electrician. She talks about starting school and high school later in the morning. And that got a lot of posts. So this is a way to talk about current topics with your public and have good two-way communication. And she's an expert at this. Take a look at her examples. Now, what you're going to do, and you can do this if you want on your own, but we're going to try to do it in groups for those of you who may not be very good at the digital stuff. You can go to EduBlogs and simply get a free blog. Sign up for it. That's what you have to do. That's the first step, is sign up for it. And once you sign up for it, if you start exploring the page, you'll find the basics for inserting your name and giving your blog a title. That's all you need to do. That shows me that you dipped your toe into this lake called two-way digital communication. That's all you need to do. Now, like I said, we were going to do this. I'm going to break you up into groups tonight. I hope to do that next week. Help each other create the account and explore the functions. You can coach each other. You don't need to finish it next week. This is due at the end of the semester, all right? And you can also ask me questions about it next week as well. By the way, speaking of blogs, I did have one that I maintained at one time. I used it as my digital portfolio. Frankly, I don't think I was very successful at it, but I was able to provide all kinds of information about my professional career, some limited information about my personal life, because this was meant to be viewed by boards of education who were looking for superintendents at the time that I was in a search, all right? So the next assignment is to create a PowerPoint. You're to review the New York State P-TECH grant application and compose an initial planning document. I'll explain a little bit more in a moment, that addresses the features of the grant, including program requirements on page 14 and 15 of the website. You can see the link underneath. This is something called program requirements. There's a lot of information, and we're going to go over that in class in the future so that I can highlight the depth of the partnerships which are expected of us at the superintendent level in New York State schools these days, all right? Certainly schools all across the country as well, even those of you outside of New York. But I'm not having you write about everything. I only want you to write about, or in the PowerPoint, give to me what's in something called program requirements. All right. And why am I doing this? Because the NELP standard is to sustain productive partnerships with communities and public, private, and nonprofit sectors to recognize and celebrate school and community improvement. That's precisely what P-TECH does, all right? It's big on partnerships, public, private, nonprofit sectors. It's a perfect vehicle for giving you an idea about the depth of the partnerships that you'll be expected to maintain. Why are we doing this? Well, I just went over that. So what's the format? It will be an email attachment in Microsoft PowerPoint or some other presentation software. Now here's the scenario, which is going to define the type of PowerPoint you put together. You are part of a hypothetical administrative team conducting initial planning on the feasibility of engaging in P-TECH. So if you're the superintendent, it's you, your business administrator, maybe your director of special education, and because it involves student programming, maybe your director of guidance or pupil personnel. The very small initial group. You're just beginning to explore this, basically asking the question, gee, should we do more on this or not? So that's where you're at, the initial planning, all right? So you're a part of a hypothetical administrative team conducting initial planning on the feasibility of engaging in P-TECH, and the superintendent has delegated to you the task of researching and reporting on the features and requirements of the P-TECH grant sponsored by NYCD, focusing on the program requirements. So you're literally going to be taking the program requirement pages and turning that into a PowerPoint. But you're not going to be just cutting and pasting, because if that's the case, just run off the pages. And I don't want you to do that. I should have put more information here, because what's going to happen here is what your superintendent typically would do is, with this information that you put together in a PowerPoint, the superintendent, would take this to a larger group, maybe to the department chairs of the high school, maybe to a parent group, maybe to the Board of Education. And so it's going to be in a larger room. You're going to put it up on the overhead projector, and it has to be something that people are able to see. And it has to be condensed, all right? This is due at the end of the semester as well. Let me give you some tips. So first of all, this is where you can find the document, all right? It's in these, well, let me see if I have another slide on that. Well, you might have to look a little bit, all right? I think it's in the application PDF, all right? And you will find then this section called, all right, purpose. And then, well, let me go over this quickly. That's why I put this please read over here. I wanted you to read this. Well, you can stop this is what's nice about the presentation. Stop the presentation right here and read this, please, because this will give you background. I don't want to just read it now. This will give you background about the purpose and the core benefits of students of the P-TECH program, all right? So stop right now and read this and then start back up. When you start back up, you'll see the second page, which I'd also like you to take a quick look at. Stop the page again when you're done, or when you're reading this. And when you start back up again, you will see that I'm pointing now to the program requirements. You don't need to, frankly, you don't even need to go to the P-TECH grant if you don't want to start putting your PowerPoint together. Here's the program requirements right here on the page. This is what you need to start putting in your PowerPoint. All right. Now here's the trick, of course. You've got to take this rather staid, not very attractive text and turn it into a PowerPoint. And you have 12 different features that I want you to get into the PowerPoint. All right? Because remember the assignment. You're part of a hypothetical administrative team. You're doing initial planning. Don't go farther down the road. Don't start getting creative on me. I don't want you to be creative. I want you to take the program requirements and turn them alone into a PowerPoint. That's it. I gotta learn to not get so excited. My heart can't take this as I get older. All right? Just do these 12. Don't talk about the program that you're going to create in a year and a half, which people do. Don't do that. Stick with the 12 program requirements, all right? And put it into a PowerPoint. What are the qualities of a good PowerPoint? Well, brevity. It should be brief. It should be accurate. It should be relevant to the conversation. There should be I want you to make sure, an emphasis on initial planning. You don't have to go any further than that. It should be in an attractive format, easy to read from where? From the back of the room. Because as I said earlier, this is going to be hypothetically shown to a larger audience later on. So you can't have, 12.14, a 12-point font, and that's about as, you can't get that small. You got to get up to about 14 or larger for it to be seen by anyone in a medium-sized room. All right? And it should be organized. All right? Use graphics if you want. That's okay. It makes it nicer. All right? I thought I had a slide on this. I guess I don't. So let me just say this. Your PowerPoint should have an opening page, right? The name of your presentation and the topic and your name as the author. So that's the first page. After that, I can think of a page or more for each of the program requirements. So you might be able to have 12 individual slides, and that could probably be it. You might find a way, all right, to put a couple of these points on one page and condense it, but you do what you think is right, all right? And don't forget, you get a do-over on all of these. If it's not looking good, I'll let you know why, and I'll give you a chance to get it right. All right, that's that assignment. Now let's go to another assignment. Here's the NELP standard to help you understand and demonstrate your ability to foster a respectful and responsive relationship with the district's Board of Education. I don't know how the heck I'm going to be able to have you demonstrate that, but I do want you to understand that. And so I put together this assignment, this practical assignment, where I'm going to require you to attend a Board of Education meeting and script the interaction between the superintendent and the board members for discussion during the next class session, and looking for instances and examples taken from Carl Christoph and Jim Marin's resources. So let me keep up with this. So I want you to, you're going to have to go to a board meeting. It doesn't have to be your Board of Education meeting, all right? It may not be easy for you to get to the Board of Education of the meeting of the board in which you work, maybe your own community Board of Education. That's fine, all right? It's just getting into a board meeting and witnessing the interaction between the superintendent and his or her board. And you're going to be scripting that, looking for certain things. And I'm going to tell you what those things are. In fact, someone else is going to tell you what those things are. His name is Carl Christoph, a man that I really admire greatly. Can't think of a man that I admire more than Carl. He's a lawyer with the firm of Hudson Russ, and for many years was chief legal counsel for the Buffalo City Schools. Last I knew, Carl left Hudson Russ and went to work as chief legal counsel for Rochester City Schools. I think he's still there. He let me videotape him in his office giving his typical presentation that he would present to the Erie County School Boards Association or any other school board and superintendent's group that would ask him to come in and talk about the superintendent and the board relationship. So this is first-rate stuff, all right? I want you to watch the video, and then you will go to the Board of Education meeting and look for the things Carl talks about. Now, I said, have you watch it. My plan was for you to watch it together. It's a 30-minute video. I wanted to watch it together. I don't know if we can do that, but I'll try to make sure that happens. So we'll review it, or you can review it on your own. I've given you the link to it. There it is. All right, it's on YouTube. Take a look at it. Also, too, another resource is here's another thing. Jim Marins is a retired superintendent who has something he calls the board members' 10 commandments and the superintendent's 10 commandments. Those written documents also talk about the basis for a good superintendent and Board of Education relationship. I'll show you how to get there. We're still going to try to watch this next week together, but you can watch it on your own. Well, you've got the link, all right? It's right here. www.youtube, all right? I'll still try to do this, send you the link in the chat room, but I don't want you to have to wait for me to do that. It's a 31-minute video presented by Carl Christoph, wonderful man. Keys to success for the district leadership team. What the heck? Oh, okay, I've just repeated this. Don't worry about this. This is from before. Now, if you want to go check out Jim Marins' website, and it's got a lot of stuff there. He's got a lot of good stuff there about entry plans as well. Some good, some bad. But there's a lot of stuff there. I have to admit, Jim hasn't been keeping it up very much. Not all of it. So some of it's dated, but there's still a lot of good information there in his toolbox. How do you get there? Superintendent of Schools, Jim Marins. I gave you the link before. Go to Resources, then go to a Superintendent and Board Members 10 Commandments. All right, so by the way, here's the entry plans if you want to look for those. Here's a transition to the superintendency program, preparing for the superintendent's toolbox. All right. So that's where you would look for Jim Marins' information if you wanted to know what to look for when you go into the Board of Education meeting. And by script, I just mean, this is kind of like you scripting a teacher's lesson. You go in with a blank piece of paper and you're looking for things, and here's some tips. These are what you're looking for. And as you watch these interactions, you're writing down what the board members said, what the superintendent said, maybe the facial gestures that they came up with, what they did. Here are a couple examples. Carl will talk, Jim and Carl will talk about, for instance, micromanagement. That the board has its job to do and the superintendent has his job. And the board should stay out of the superintendent's work. All right. Otherwise, that's called micromanagement, and it leads to dysfunction in school districts. You can sometimes see micromanagement come up at a board meeting between a superintendent and a board. For instance, a board member will say, well, Mr. Superintendent, an individual board member will say, I want to come in and view the personnel records for this teacher that we're talking about. Now, superintendent's got a choice right there. What's he going to do? First of all, this is an individual board member who has no more rights or privileges than any other person off the street. The board can only act as a corporate body. So unless the majority of the board members agree that they want to do this, that's not going to happen. And the superintendent needs to say it. So that's the first problem that comes up, that individual board members can't do anything. Oh, I'm going to come into your building and go through classrooms. You can't do that. And you might see that happen at a board meeting. Here's another example of board members who misuse executive session. There'll be a sensitive topic, which according to the freedom, the open meetings law, says it should be talked about in open session. But board member says, no, I think we should talk about that in executive session. Superintendent has to speak up and say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That's not an appropriate use of executive session topic. And so you might see these things happen in a board meeting between that and a superintendent. You might also see a perfectly well-managed board meeting where none of this comes up, and that's noteworthy as well. And you're going to let me know about that in your scripted reflection. And when you give those to me, we'll be talking about those in class as well. Okay? So that's your next assignment. All right. There is another NELP standard talking about advocating for the needs and priorities of the district. That's really huge as a superintendent or a central office administrator and a principal as well. You advocate on a lot of different levels. You can find principals often advocating for children who are maybe abused by their parents, or had a rough run-in with the law, or deserve a second chance, or have a teacher who is ganging up on them. A lot of different reasons why an administrator with a heart might advocate for a child, or you might advocate for your staff. All right, or you might advocate for a change in legislation, or you might advocate for more money at budget time. Advocacy is always happening. Interesting thing about advocacy is that you need to know to whom do you advocate and around what purpose. So we're going to get into, during the class session, into laws. I'm going to make sure that you know where laws originate, statutes, and the difference between laws, statutes, policies, procedures, handbooks, past practices, right? That's for the class session. But your assignment is to create a Word document that's an advocacy letter. The format shall be consistent with that of a formal business letter written to a New York State legislator, or if you're not in New York State, one of your state legislators associated with the student's geographical Senate or Assembly district. So wherever you are, I'm also going to teach you, if you don't already know, how to identify who your assembly people are, who your Senate and Assembly persons are. All right. Notice I didn't say national offices, because to be honest with you, it's rare that individuals at the district level advocate at the national level. That's usually done by large statewide organizations. Your personal advocacy usually happens at the state level. All right, here's the rubric, if you will, for the advocacy letter. The advocacy letter will be consistent with that of a formal business letter: date, address, name, and location, a formal salutation, introductory paragraph, body, closing paragraph, student's name and contact information, proper grammar, spelling, syntax, etc. will be graded, as will the format, the appearance of the letter. All right, this is due at the end of the semester. I'm going to give you quite a few tips about it. Here's how to write a letter to your member of Congress. Now, just forget Congress. Just put a state assembly or Senate. It's the very same thing. Here's everything you need to know right here. Use your own words. Do not use pre-written message, which comes out a lot these days. Include a return address so Stafford knows you are from the member's district or state. Introduce yourself. Tell the readers a little bit about yourself. After the greeting, be clear and concise about what your issue is and what position you want your lawmaker to take. Include a personal story. That always helps. Be sure to back up your stance with statistics and facts. A little bit of data never hurt. Try to show how the issue affects your constituents in your state, in your school district. Always be courteous and respectful. Write your letter or email in a clear and concise manner. And if you're willing, as part of your campaign, try to personalize as much as you can. Your advocacy letter that you provide to me should contain these features. I'm going to be looking for these. So make sure that you refer back to this. I'm giving you a very good outline. All right. Now, if we had met last night, we would have gone over mission and vision. But this is where we will pick up at the next class, because it's just too unfair to make you go beyond anything be on 42 minutes here, which is taking me to get this far. 42 minutes just listening to me with this soliloquy. So we'll get back to this next week. Oh my gosh, my fingers are so crossed. I can't tell you how much. All right, that's it. I do enjoy interacting with you, whether it's live or here in this presentation. That's it for me. I'm going to sign off now. I've got to wait for this to be made available to me by Canvas because it's not immediately available, the recordings. It should be available in a couple hours, which means I can then download it and pump it into Final Cut Pro so that I can put the times there as a guide for you, and that'll just take me a few minutes. So I still have to wait for the recording to become available. All right, 42 minutes and 25 seconds. I'm out of here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.